Everybody, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Ad Podcast. Today, I have a fabulous guest, JJ, as we affectionately call him, Jim Jonassen, who is the founder and CEO of Jim Jonassen and Associates, an executive firm that's placed thousands of C-level candidates inside of companies like Figs, Honest Company, and 2K Games, amongst a host of other VC portfolio companies. And Jim is also the founder of Thursday Nights, a 501c3 that builds community inside of the Silicon Beach and LA tech scene, but has also given over $2 million to youth causes across the Los Angeles area. And I'm not only a fan, but I'm also a user of the product, the one and only recruiter that has ever gotten me to jump ship in 15 years. So hopefully that says something. But I can definitely vouch for them. But yeah, Jim, JJ, thanks for coming on the show, buddy.
Hey man, it's great to be here. You have effectively taken our stick rate, which is like the tenure that people we place actually stay where they are. I think you 3x'd our average. So thank you.
Yeah, well, 8 years with the social standard and still going, although I have recently moved to a fractional status with them. But it's, when you find something that works, I'm one of those kind of guys where if the culture is good and I can continue to sell, why mess with a good thing? But you got me at the right time when I did make the jump. But so JJ, you founded over 5 executive firms throughout your career, but do you want to maybe just walk us through a little bit of your background? You don't have to hit all the resume notches, but maybe some of the high points. Give us a little bit of color.
Sure. I guess you could say the through line in my career is talent. It's always been about talent, and since starting in the business in the early 80s, I've started 5 search firms. All of them have been in tech and digital. What we kind of refer to now as the innovation economy, as pretty much software ate the world. Now AI is eating software, and everybody's in tech and digital. So, and then along the way, I started 3 software companies. So I like to think of that as in hiring and in building teams, I've been burned from both sides of the plate, both from the hiring authority and the headhunter. So, primarily, we've been kind of on a path that got us to JJA, which is the firm that I started in 2007 after selling Riviera Partners. And we're a small boutique. You can think of us as a SEAL team. We're not the cavalry. Riviera was about 25 when I sold it, and now there are, I think, 200 people in that organization.
Wow.
There's 4 of us at JJA, and we used to be all West Coast, all mostly LA. Now more of my partners are in Florida than there are in California. It's really nationally, and we've done some neat things, with Thursday Nights. Before there was a Thursday Nights, there was something called Lawnmower back in the 90s, the Los Angeles New Media Roundtable, and there's always been this, this great opportunity to convene, great groups of people, bring them together in live events, for something that I don't think of as networking. I think of it as, we're getting in a place where we can let our hair down, meet our colleagues, have an open discussion, share some great food and wine, and, get to know some new people. And we never have enough opportunities to see the people that we've working with sometimes for decades, in a place where we're all reaching into our pocket and, throwing in a few bucks for kids in the local community. So that's kind of been the theme all along, and we've kept it going with Thursday Nights. Over the last couple of years, we've partnered with Oracle Cloud and NetSuite, and we've been doing events all around the country. Last year we were in Nashville and Austin. This year we just came back from Miami, where we did an opening night dinner for Formula One Grand Prix weekend. We were in New York 3 weeks before that at Gramercy Tavern. We're going to be in Austin again this year, and Salt Lake, and back in Los Angeles. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It provides us an opportunity to develop new client relationships, add some value to those clients and prospects, from the standpoint of connections with, groups like Oracle and IMA Financial, our partner that's in insurance and risk, and Deloitte and Mazars and a number of others. And we've been working with Dave Young and the team over at Cooley for years and years, just great sponsors that love getting out and getting people together.
Yeah, I love that. That was going to be a question that I dived in later, but since you spent a little time on it, let's continue down that thread. How important is it to business development teams and marketing teams within services businesses, but even other B2B SaaS companies to really understand the importance of fostering great communities and great events in kind of the overabundance of digital touch points? We're talking right now and doing this podcast over a live stream format, but my favorite time when I do this show is when I can actually take my kit and do it in person, just because of the chemistry. But how important is it to organizations to have that skill set of curating these really high touch, intimate experiences that you've been doing with clients for so long?
I think, COVID proved to us that, at the beginning it was like, hey, I can work from the back room, or I can work from the casita like I'm doing, or, we can go up to, no one knows that I'm in a cabin in Big Bear.
Mm-hmm.
That got old pretty quick with, the Zoom fatigue. And I think we found that in the last few years, people are absolutely craving getting out, being in a place where it isn't the icky, uncomfortable Chamber of Commerce schmoozer, where it's the hi, I'm Dylan Conroy, I'm with Social Standard. It's more of, hey man, what's going on? And people are talking about sports, and they're talking about movies, and they're talking about concerts, and they're talking about their kids. And that's where there's really an opportunity for relationships to form once there's some common, thread, so that after that, I say it like this, we have a call, maybe something will develop. We have a Zoom, good chance something may develop in the future. But if we have a drink, or we share a meal, or we go play golf, or we're at an event together, I'm returning that person's call for the rest of my career. And unless one way or the other, there was, the asshole card got played. I think most people are that way. You spend a little bit of time in a live situation, and there are those connection points from life and business and family and stuff that sticks. So it's a great way. It's also, young people ask me, like, how do you really, kind of develop client relationships? And I said, you got to entertain people, find out what it is they like to do. A walk on the beach, a great meal, a round of golf, a hike, whatever it is, make that happen.
Yeah, I love it. I just, I don't think we're doing ourselves any service of, doing so much in the digital world these days. I think from a relationship perspective, it's just really, in my opinion, almost impossible to build relationships over Zoom. You can conduct business, you can get things done, but you can't build relationships. So I love that you've taken the Thursday nights concept and put it on the road. For those experiences, are you pretty much inviting people from your warm network when you go from city to city, or are you bringing in net new people? Like, what's the make? I'm fascinated in the process of what goes into putting experience like that together, and what's the the right formula for friendlies versus net new people that you're bringing into your network.
It's a good question. So I'll give you some examples. So we sat with Oracle, and they said, let's do a private equity partners dinner in New York City. We said, fantastic. New York, absolute capital, private equity, investment banking, Wall Street, capital markets. So it was a rich, kind of robust, net that we could cast, and we get people in the room. They said, let's do the same thing in Austin. We said, you know what? There's not enough density in Austin or Miami. So there we did an ecosystem event where it was private equity, venture capital, and CEOs of both, emerging growth and growth stage companies. So from that, we then back off, and then it's the classic kind of degrees of separation. But like you, we say, who are the influencers in Miami? We hooked up with, 5 refugees from LA and Silicon Valley that had, somehow founded their way to Tampa or Miami. We hit them. They put us in touch with 4. They put us in touch with 8. But all that time we were curating. We were saying, where are the posers? Where are the people you don't want to be in the room with? And you do a little bit of that, kind of reference checking like we do. And someone says, Dylan Conroy, great group, really fun. He'll be great to have in there. Boom. Now I'm going to find out however way I have to get a warm introduction to you. And then I'm going to say, I'm not going to call you and say, hey, do you need any headhunting or some
Right.
insurance or Oracle Cloud? No, I'm going to go, how'd you like to go to Prime 112, have prime steak, stone crab claws, vintage champagne. And by the way, we're going to have swag from the Oracle Red Bull racing team.
Wow.
It was a pretty easy sell.
Yeah.
Similarly, we had a great venue in Austin, and I hit 4 or 5 of the people that I know. One investor said, I'm buying tickets for 4 of my portfolio company CEOs.
Wow.
So it's like anything. There's a top of the funnel, and then you're kind of curating. Ooh, get those invites out. Haven't heard back. Get these people to ping them. But in every case, we end up with just a great group. And then there's just people that are saying, doesn't matter what you're doing in that room. I'm super uncomfortable. I'm not showing up. That's great. No problem.
Yeah. No, I think there's still a spectrum of people that fall on that antisocial, they want to, be behind the keyboard and don't like to interact with humans. So
a lot of times too, if people can see, hey, who's going to be in the room? So what we always do is we'll send out invites, and then about the third kind of little drip campaign, we say, look who's coming to Thursday nights, and we send like a logo cloud, and people are like, oh shit, I need to be in that room. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of builds that FOMO effect, and maybe gives people a little bit of comfortability that they'll be with like-minded, like-suited people, but maybe tugs on their strings of, I'd like to meet somebody at that. So it gives them extra motivation and a sense of belonging, I suppose, that they're going to show up to a room full of like-minded people. So I love that. So, I'd like to take a step back and just talk a little bit about the industry at large. And if you could kind of maybe educate my audience for what's the difference between, maybe a traditional quote unquote headhunter and what you guys do at JJA from the perspective of retained search versus, some of those organizations that we've all got emails from that are kind of bounty driven, percentage of placement, et cetera. And then, you guys have an interesting model because you also do it from time to time for equity. So would love to first just have you kind of give us a little bit of a A/B description of what separates your level of recruiting capabilities from kind of what people might be familiar with stereotypically from the cold emails that they get into their inbox every day. And then also would love to understand a little bit about what's the criteria that you look at when you decide to take an all equity placement.
Yeah. So I started out, doing recruiting, and it was, straight contingency, and contingency says your fee is contingent upon putting a butt in the chair. And before that, you're doing what I say is you're selling used people. If one lands, you can make a placement fee. I started the first software company, and we automated a bunch of search firms around the country. And I did a bunch of retained search firm work. And one of the partners there, I said, hey, how would you go from doing contingency to doing retained? Because I knew that if I went back into search, I was only going to do retained. Mm-hmm. And they said, you learn how to say no. I said, what do you mean by that? They said, they'll say, JJ, bring me the candidates. I'm going to pay you the fee if, you find the right guy. I said, no, we want to run an exclusive campaign. So, and they said, and 9 times out of 10, they'd say, fine, what's the deal? Well, there's a small retainer up front, and then a middle milestone when you hit a short list, and then the rest. And then instead of a 30-day or a 90-day guarantee, we're going to co-own that placement with you for a full year. So we're coming out of probably one of the longest kind of downturns in the recruiting business in tech, especially in anything that's been using private capital, whether that's venture capital or private equity. So we've got 6 quarters of really, rifts and freezes and layoffs, and super hard to, both raise and deploy capital. So what I say is that's when all the tourists go home. So a lot of people are in recruiting when it's like go days, and there's, 7 vacancies for every candidate out there, but the tables have turned. So we've seen a lot of those because there's no barrier to entry. If you've got a phone, you can say, I've got a resume and I'm in the headhunting business. But it really boils down to what's your batting average? How quickly can you put the person in? And then how long will they stay? That's where your reputation, your brand goes out in front of you. So we like to put everything that we've done out on the website. All our tombstones are there. I think when we look at it, there's 2 words that get thrown around a lot. Hey, let's partner on a search, and then it's an engagement. Well, we take those words really seriously. So we're always looking for a client that is truly engaged, meaning they're going to make time, they're going to give us feedback, they're going to give us, kind of rankings and scorings after the calls. We're going to discuss resumes or submittals, and we're going to triage them a little bit. So having that level of engagement and partnership, it really makes the job a lot easier, because up front, you're doing all the heavy lifting. The client thinks they know what they want, but you really take them through a process where it's like, take a look at this resume, tell me what you think. Kind of like what casting agents do in Hollywood. You throw headshots down on the table. Who do you want to star in this role? Look through those bios and tell me what you like about them, what you don't like about them, what are the turn-ons, what are the turn-offs. So we're going to be able to understand the preferences and the biases to really make a great match. Then our job is to do that preliminary screen so that we say, we're only going to give you a candidate that has all the table stakes. Then you can spend the time on personality, EQ, IQ, curiosity, all of those things that really make it, that get you past what I call the airport lounge test, which is picture yourself in an airport lounge in a blizzard for 6 hours with this person. Do you really want to be in that foxhole together? So if you can spend enough time and spend some social time, and just like I said before, go out and have a meal, go for a drive, go for a walk, get to know each other.
Yeah, I love that. I know some of the interviews that you've sent me out on and throughout the years have, culminated with a dinner at Morton's or something like that. And I think, that's an important component of it, right? Because a lot of people can present well over the phone or on an interview. But when you take them into a social setting, you kind of see, do they treat the wait staff well, or do they drink a little bit too much? Or, there's a lot of things that you can get from those social, or, going out on a golf match, and do they keep score accurately and honestly, or do they, fling their driver across the fairway when they don't make a shot? Those are all little things that kind of can add up to some of the things that, especially, it's funny. I listened to a podcast that you were on recently, and I never knew this about you, that you considered yourself an internal optimist, and that you always think, the best of every candidate and are looking for the upside. Because I've been through some interview cycles where you can be very hard hitting and ask some really tough questions. But I feel like as a sales leader, that's been my biggest challenge, is that I'm an internal optimist as well. Every sales guy I meet, I want to hire. I want to find the reason why they're the right fit versus the wrong fit. So I've had to learn to almost not trust my instincts around, who to hire, and really have, other teammates who I can put through secondary interviews, or interviews that are parallel to mine, where they can check my, my optimism of wanting to hire everybody, I suppose.
Yeah. Early in my career, I had a client say to me, and it was saying that to somebody else about me, that said, JJ's never met a candidate he doesn't like. And it's like, you literally have to put on this contrarian, explain to me why this would have been the case, and tell me in the aftermath of that. So you've got to ask kind of leading open-ended questions where you really get a candidate reveals themselves, and you'll be able to see it. But the other part is, we go 2 partners on every search. We'll say, hey, I think there's something up here. I'm seeing a yellow flag. The second thing is we make sure that the client sets up, a set of interviews where they're getting more eyes on the candidate, and then the last thing and the most important thing is you really do the reference checks, and if we can, recruiting, you can explain all of recruiting with bumper stickers. My bumper sticker is, there is no better predictor of future performance than a back channel reference from a trusted source. I mean, wow. If we can get there, and we don't even have to have that first degree relationship, we can reach out to people and say, listen, we know you are a peer of this individual. We've been retained by this client. We'd like to have a conversation. If you're able to provide an unbiased, confidential, discussion about this individual, we'd love to talk. And people are like, yeah, let's talk. And then we'll ask them, we'll say, are there a couple of other people maybe that weren't on the candidates list that we could talk to? Boom, boom, boom. Now you start to get to that 360, really view of the candidate. The first thing we tell the candidates is, give us your references, 2 bosses, 2 peers, 2 subordinates, and either board members or investors that you've worked with. And they're like, wow, because we want the 360. We don't want something 20 years ago. Oh, here's my college roommate. Here's my fraternity brother. It's like, no, we're throwing out the Russian judge. We want to get a real 360 of the individual. And if you get people talking and they get comfortable, it's amazing what people reveal, and then you can see, hey, sometimes you're going to get this, but what's really below the surface is that,
Yeah.
And even then, though, you get a bad reference or a questionable reference. What we say is, if the preponderance of them are consistent and they're positive, and I get a bad one, now I got to get 3 more good ones, to kind of even it out. Because at the end of the day, if there are multiple yellow flags, they all turn red, and the answer is no. And we're senior enough where we're able to convince a client and advocate for a candidate. We're going to say, you don't think Dylan's the guy, and you don't see it on his resume, but we want you to take the meeting. And we can convince them to take that. We can advocate for a candidate. Similarly, when the client's going, Dylan's my guy, I'm going to go, we're going to pull Dylan out of we're going to pull Dylan out of the running because we know that he's an axe murderer.
I love it. So I wanted to ask you, you were at the kind of the ground floor of the direct consumer movement, especially as it pertains to the Los Angeles, unicorns. You did big placements at Figs and Honest Company. I would love to just kind of get a little bit of your, war stories from just your kind of take on, that whole time frame of when all these direct consumer challenger brands were popping up in the Silicon Beach scene and kind of making a run for going after big portions of market share for these legacy companies. Just would love to know if you have any reflections on that time and maybe a couple interesting anecdotes.
Yeah, when you told me we might want to talk about this, I thought about it, and from 2007 to present, we've been working between San Diego and Santa Barbara up until about 2018, and then we were more national. But during that time, Los Angeles and the greater LA area became a center of excellence for D2C. Mm-hmm. And the roots are, if you really think about LA, it's an LA story. LA's about audience, LA's about narrative, LA's about brand, LA's about selling a vision and a fantasy and a lifestyle and a vibe. And it was like, that was really what came out. There were incredibly talented founders and marketers and, and the people that kind of, you could create a lot of leverage with a really great crew that had some of those things in common. And I think about some of the stories and some of the, the rocket ship rides that we were a part of, because of that. Also, Los Angeles is a great center of excellence from the standpoint of ad tech, from machine learning and data and analytics. And all of that became, again, back to the conversion funnel and all that really, separates, these kinds of companies. We just signed up a couple of searches for, a company in Los Angeles, a direct consumer company in a very hot area of, health and wellness. Mm-hmm. And it's 12 people. They launched the product last June. They're on a $100 million run rate. They'll exit the year at $250 million run rate. And it was like, this is stuff where they made a market. They were able to now, their creative was phenomenal, but they applied data and machine learning and analytics to it, and they moved really fast. They stayed lean, and they got in fast and they moved very quickly. And it's like, this is what we've seen happen time and again in LA. Yeah,
no, I love that. I think that's a perfect analogy. You have the epicenter of storytelling, and whether that's, traditional Hollywood talent or the adjacent creative agency or creative people, just a creative ecosystem. And then you've got the intersection of celebrity culture and founder, celebrity led branding and brands. And then on top of that, the MarTech ad tech convergence. So yeah, I think I've never really thought of, what was the genesis for all that, but I think that's a good observation. So I wanted to, you had a quote in another podcast that I listened to. You talked a lot, you had a quote that was CEOs or people who are responsible for the human capital decisions within their organizations need to think of themselves as owners of a sports team. I loved that analogy. Could you maybe expand a little bit on that and what you meant by that quote?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of, every day as a leader of a team, of a division, of a company, you're fielding a team, that team is taking the field every day. And we get to a place where we say, well, the org chart's set. I can't change the order. I can't change the lineup. But constantly, when we go in and we do a search, the clients say, I had no idea how much I was settling for what we had in that position, for what we had, out on the field that we were putting out there, that we got used to it. And we just didn't know, kind of that we had alternatives or that we could upgrade there. So, the other thing is managers and head coaches are constantly recruiting within the team. And you're looking at, are people in the right positions? Are they still motivated? Are they curious? Are they excited? Are they jumping out of bed? So it's kind of like re-recruiting. I saw Tony La Russa, who was, in town, I think for the Cardinals playing the Dodgers, and he did this lunch, and he talked about, he gets these young recruits. They're already millionaires. They're 19 years old. They got a hoodie on with the beats in their ears, and he can't even talk to them. And the way that he had to get to them was he used key members of the team that were veterans, and he had them kind of work and slowly move them to a place where finally we could make a connection. So it's kind of like the same thing in building that team, and think about it as teamwork. You've got certain players that you're going to use as advocates and coaches, player coaches, they're going to work with other people on the team. But I think constantly it's looking at that roster saying, are we fielding the best team? The other thing is we're looking at it, in that bubble of just our squad, but you live in a competitive landscape. What are we seeing from the standpoint of who are we up against and who are they fielding?
Yeah, no, I love that analogy. And also from the perspective of, the sports analogy is that even if you don't have a spec and you don't have an open position, you should always be recruiting. I placed most of the people in Social Standard over the last 8 years just from my own personal network. And it was always just because I was always, meeting with lots of people, whether they were potential clients or partners, and always was making notes of like, okay, like, if a role opened up at some time, this might be an interesting person to come back to. So I think that's another add-on to that analogy, is the idea of like, you always need to be recruiting whether you're actually hiring or not.
Yeah, I think that it was Vinod Khosla said CEOs should be spending 50% of their time recruiting. It's like that's like gospel, It's like, and whether you're recruiting, re-recruiting, internal, external, you're constantly looking for that, that development. So yeah, it's and we kind of lose sight of that. It's just like, okay, team's in place. We'll revisit this at year-end reviews or something like that.
Yeah,
totally. Because you know what? If I'm out there, their phones are ringing.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's awesome. All right, so I want to move over to kind of, how you kind of block and tackle your day, because I know that you are a machine. You're a self-admitted workaholic, hopefully of the good variety. And to maintain that kind of schedule, that kind of energy to be able to work as much as you do. Of course, it comes from the perspective of passion and enjoying what you do and making a really great living and being able to provide for your family. But I feel like you also need to have some tools to accommodate that type of worker mentality and that type of run rate. So a couple of things that I noted from some of the research and what I already know about you is that you're an avid golfer. You also train in a boxing gym 3 days a week, and you've applied meditation as a practice in your life. I would love to kind of understand if you could maybe even comment on all three of those things and how they open up space in your day to be creative and be strategic and keep you healthy. I'm always fascinated about what are the components that people are doing outside of the blocking and tackling of work that keep them energized and moving ahead and keeping their eyes on the ball, so to speak.
Yeah, good question. So in my 20s and 30s, I played rugby, and that was, 2 nights a week practice and games on the weekends across a long season. And it was like phenomenal balance because, banging the keyboard and banging the phones all day and sitting in your crouched, leaning over a warm screen, but getting out there and just having that contact. So when I was in Santa Monica, I started boxing. And now for the last 3 years out here, I've been boxing. I can't tell you what kind of a difference that it makes in that, when I'm in there and you're sparring and you're blocking and you're working on the pads and just like, and all I have to do is show up and 60 minutes later, I come out of there drenched and I'm like, my head is open and my lungs are open. So somewhere where you can get some of that outlet, and that a little bit of take some of that energy out is great. Meditation saved my marriage, probably saved my life in that. I mean, when you do a 30, 40 call, 200 email day, and then, it's 5:15, I'm just going to shift gears and go in, and Mimi and I are going to have a drink and relax and have dinner. My brain's still going like this. So if I can get my meditation in the morning, and then I can create just a little bit of space between the two times, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty magical. I went through every one of the apps, Calm and Headspace and 10% Happier and everything. And I ended up on one, free, it's Buddhist, Buddhist jars. They rub the jars, and it's 1 hour. I just set it for 25 minutes. I get up in the morning, I sit, and I just let that thing massage the monkey mind until finally I can just pull myself back and focus. And that trains your mind for the day to say, for all of the distractions from TikTok to I'm going to double click 17 times till I get to the right research and I've lost an hour, bring me back, get back on point. That's been really great. Golf to me is like the ultimate because, as somebody would say, they're like, why do you golf? It's like, because you can have a beer, a cigar, and a hot dog at the turn. What part of that doesn't work? So, and I really use my club here. I bring a game. So I have clients and prospects, and I'm constantly inviting people out because when they come out, they're like, I don't like desert golf. It's targets and this and that. And then we get out and they're like, oh shit. This is amazing. So it's such a treat. I mean, I stand on the first tee at my club and I look left and I look right and I'm going, I don't believe they let me play here.
So nice. Yeah.
So great. That it's like to treat yourself, and I'm getting out once or maybe twice a week when I should sneak out in the morning and play a little twilight round, but I don't because I put in 12 hours a day doing what I do and what I love because this is really my sport. I mean, talking to entrepreneurs, getting excited about their story, going evangelizing that story to really talented people that aren't looking for a job. And then on the other side, having the conversation with a candidate to a place where they reveal themselves. And it's like, I hate my boss. I have no interest in doing what I'm doing anymore. I'm in maintenance mode and I want to get excited again. We're like, all right, now we're talking. So that's like, I feel like I don't believe they pay us to do what we do. So
that's wild
every day.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, obviously getting to talk to internet, that's part of the reason why I started this podcast was just because there was a degree of, let's say, prospect that I just couldn't get on the phone for a sales pitch, but they'd be willing to talk to me, on a podcast and get their thoughts and conversations broadcasted to my 30,000 LinkedIn followers. And it's been great because I'm essentially, learning from some of the smartest and brightest people and getting access to a
present company excluded.
Hey, no, look, man, I was it's funny. We have a mutual friend, Nate Pettyjohn, and I've been working with him on a ghostwriting project. And, he was prompting me to, come up with more anecdotes about, people who've used personal capital in a way that has been truly, a great example and super impactful. And I was reminded of a story that I tell once in a while about you that I hadn't told in a while that I had not forgotten, but I just hadn't flipped the mental Rolodex open. And just, the power of an introduction, I think was kind of the topic. And I told you the story before, I think maybe online, of an introduction that you made that was not around business, but how impactful that was, to remind you of it. So we were at South by Southwest, and I think I was complaining about, the commute that I was currently on because I was newly at Social Standard, getting my sea legs. And, I'm pretty dedicated when I start something in first 60, 90 days. I was living in San Diego, but I was commuting down to LA every single day. So I would get on the train 3 hours into the office, spend the whole week in LA, and then come back. So I was away from the family. I had, a young baby at home, a 1-year-old. My 8-year-old daughter was 1 at the time. And you introduced me to a gentleman. His name escapes me right now, but he was somebody that you placed at K2. And he was local here at Carlsbad, and he had a little 4-seat Cirrus plane. And he would fly it back and forth from Carlsbad to Santa Monica. And just from you introducing us over email, this is a guy who had never met me. You know, he had no idea if I was an axe murderer, you know, like you mentioned. And he was like, yeah, man, you know, show up at the airport at 6:30 in the morning and, you know, hop in the plane and I'll you know, let you come. When it's convenient for both of us, you can bum a ride with me and skip the 3-hour commute and go door to door from Carlsbad Airport to Santa Monica, where I could walk to my office in 30 minutes. Like that's something that money can't buy. You know, that's a life changer right there. And the power of an introduction, I think, you know, a lot of people don't realize the impact they can have on somebody's life by making an introduction. But more importantly, I think, you know, the introduction by itself wouldn't have mattered. It was the fact that this guy had such trust in you that if you introduced him to somebody else, that he could literally trust the guy to get into a plane with him and sit there with instruments in front of him. Like, I could have pulled a handle and put us into the Pacific Ocean if I wanted to. And the guy,
or he could have kamikazed you into a mountain.
Totally. And we both had that mutual trust that, you know, JJ put us in touch so we can trust each other with our lives. And
you had the back channel reference up front.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, I digress a little bit there. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah. So the question that I wanted to ask you was, how do you find, because you mentioned, you know, you're spending a lot of your day talking to founders and figuring out what they need, but then there's also the components that you've talked about on other shows that a lot of times the best candidates are not looking for a job. They're, you know, happy and going along their daily lives. Are there indicators that you guys use to potentially find people when you think they might be, you know, motivated to move? Or is it really just magic that you kind of land on people the right day, the right time, and kind of plant that seed? I'd love to hear a little bit about the, you know, the half art, the half science of it all.
Yeah, it's really neither. It is grind.
Wow.
So, and here's what I mean. So we'll get a spec and we'll understand stage, sector, functional expertise, level, et cetera. And now we start to say, okay, here's the building of a query. We're now going to look at, and we literally build lists. So at the beginning of that search, Jason or Sam or myself might look at 500 bios, like across an 8-hour period. And we're quality Nazis. We're looking for the best companies, career trajectory, academic pedigree, you know, real accomplishments. And if we see those things, we don't care whether they're looking or not. So that goes from the 300-400 do we say, here's now a set of 150 that we think really represent, we've cast that net into what we think is a rich pool of talent. Now here's the second part of the work. I got to take that story about social standard or about pro rata search that we're doing right now, and I got to put some sizzle on it. We got to come where candidates are seeing stuff constantly all day long, you know, and they're hearing about what are the requirements instead of what's exciting about the deal, what's exciting about the investors, what's exciting about the market, what's exciting about the competitive landscape. And we deliver that. And then we'll say something like, hey, listen, I'd really like to talk to you about this, but if this one isn't the right one or this isn't the right timing, take a look at our website, look what we do. I still want to have a conversation and meet you. We get a really high return rate of people to just say, you know, something in this sounds like I should, you know, let's have a conversation. So now it's like, now we get an opportunity to really pitch and screen them. And again, then we'll have candidates that do this. Sure, I'll take a meeting. We'll say, no, you won't. Why would a guy like you look at this point? As your broker, I advise you to buy more of the stock in the company you're currently in. And then they're either going to say, you're right, don't send me out. Now we save the client some time. Or they're going to say, I hate my boss. I hate my commute. I hate the product, you know, whatever it is. And they're going to reveal. Then we find what we call the career wound. Okay, Dylan, now I'm going to stick my finger in that wound and rub it around. And then we're really going to get them to reveal themselves. I'm going to say, all right, let's get that resume. Let's tell you more about the opportunity. And it's like, but it's work, man. You got to grind. You got to follow up. I'm after Dylan for the third call. He hasn't returned. I've hit him on LinkedIn. I've hit him on email. Now I'm going to your friends and I'm saying, you got to get Dylan to take my call.
I love it.
It's just relentless, grind it out, get in there and go. And then it's like when the light comes on in the candidate's face, you're like, okay, I got him. And now we got to like do the work so that again, and when we coach the client, hey, when we get in there, don't just be on the buy side, give a little sell, tell them about the opportunity, tell them about your origin story, tell them about what makes your culture different. So they're like, oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's not completely unlike the influencer business where we've got to sell the brand that they need to work with a particular influencer, and then we've got to convince the influencer that they should work with the brand. So it's a bit of a double-sided sell as well.
Totally.
So I wanted to get your take. I don't know. I feel like this is an age-old problem that I've been trying to solve for my entire career as a sales leader, but I still am find myself often with, looking at the sales teams that I've built and seeing that 20% of them tend to generate 80% of the returns. And there's always this unweighted balance of people that are, I don't know. I think it's just, I guess my complaint is it's hard to find salespeople. And I've found it all the way up and down the spectrum, from senior guys that are SVPs down to SDRs. Once in a while I'll find some younger people with real X factor. And then my biggest challenge is keeping those people, because they tend to be so great that eventually they network their way into some opportunities that I can't shield them from forever, and nor should I. But I hate developing somebody for a year and a half, and then losing them to one of my competitors. But I guess that's probably inevitable as well. But I would just wonder, do you have any advice for sales leaders out there? How do they find the 20% versus the 80%?
So again, I think you got to start by saying, I'm only going to look for the top performers, and people stay in a sales role if they're making money. And if I can see the tenure and the success and the growth and revenue of the company and the time that they stayed there, we can usually find out from people around them, were they there? Were they part of or leading that growth in revenue? Now we're talking to the individual, we're challenging them, we're asking them about their performance, we're asking them about what they've achieved. And then comes a moment of truth, which is, I want to see your W-2s. I want to see proof, of where your earnings were. Great performers are like, how many years back you want to go? The ones that aren't, you see the sweat start coming off their forehead. So, and then it's like, then we're going to do reference checking. Then we're going to look at, is this really the right time, in your career to make this kind of a move? So, I mean, you're right. And then the last thing is, and you walked into a barber shop and said, do you think I need a haircut? If you're working with us, you're working with either a 6 or a 12-month guarantee. So yeah. It takes you 2 quarters to figure out if they've got it and if they're doing it. So here's what it says. The fact that we guarantee the placement of a seller for 6 or 12 months, depending on the product that you're using with us, it says we're not going to let you make a mistake, because if you do, we got to do the search over for free.
Yeah, okay. Have a little bit of a warranty.
I'm talking to their boss. I'm talking to customers. I'm talking to others, and we're like, we validated it. This person knows how to close. They have the Rolodex. They have the performance. They've led and managed teams. You know why? Because we've talked to them.
Yeah, I love that. I have a document with every sale I've ever made. I actually totaled it up the other day, and it was 50 million, which is not bad generally at pre-revenue style under $1 million companies. But yeah, I'm always prepared to come with the receipts if I have to. So I want to pivot into, you, I imagine, as a recruiter, have probably leveraged LinkedIn even more than myself as a salesperson. I was an early adopter, but I've been using it as essentially the backbone of my prospecting journey for the last 13, 14 years in advertising and media sales. I've noticed a tipping point, I guess I would say, in the last year on LinkedIn, where LinkedIn has become more than just a catalog of living and breathing resumes. It's become more than a place where sales and business development people go to find prospects. It's really truly become a thriving social network with its own influencer ecosystem, its own social strategies. So I'm wondering, How much are you guys looking at LinkedIn from not just the perspective of like a resume now, but are you looking at how candidates are building their personal brand and using LinkedIn as a marketing platform for their personal brand? Does that come into the conversation now when you guys are thinking about search specs that you guys are working on?
So I'll chop it into two pieces. One is, I think back in the days when we would call a candidate and they'd say, "How'd you get my resume?" Well, it's like, that the last time I heard that was 15 years ago, because now everyone's resume is on LinkedIn. So I like to think of that as the inmates are running the asylum. That whole database is out there, so you can see everybody. But we were still, for decades, advocates of a professional resume, of really a well-detailed bio with lots of outcomes and business results and performance, and name the names of the partners, accounts, etc. Now I'm seeing more and more, and we're more fans of putting all of that in a very robust but not long-winded LinkedIn profile. So we're finding that executives are using that profile. Now, cut from the days of "Where'd you get my resume?" It was also like, if your boss saw that your profile on LinkedIn had changed, it's like, "Oh, here's flight risk." Dylan just added like 3 more paragraphs on each of his jobs. He's looking, so take the time to really get that bio, and I think get it there, because it is your personal brand. Now, the other side of it, which is, are we judging, or are we screening, or are we using a criteria? How is this person leveraging some thought leadership and commenting in the social? The answer is no, because in my book, it's great if people are, and probably in the years that come, it'll be more and more important. But man, I'm almost more impressed with people where there's less and less on their bio. You know why? Because they're busy.
Yeah, good point.
Making it happen with their team, with their product, with their prospects, whatever it is. And I find, and a lot of them have removed themselves from LinkedIn because they're like, "I don't want any headhunters, prowling my LinkedIn." So it's kind of a two-sided sword, but I don't think we're at a point yet where, kind of average candidate, average person that's working their job is really thinking. Obviously, you're in the business. If you're promoting a company or a product or an event or whatever, yes. But no, we don't use it because we just don't find it prevalent enough that people have gotten that as an individual, I'm building my brand. I'm showing in the kind of people that I follow and the entities that I follow and the events that I comment on. We're just kind of not there yet. But again, for good reason, because they're working.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So essentially, being a LinkedIn influencer doesn't give anybody additional street cred or stars on their resume when you guys are doing searches.
I guess what I would say is, I always look at the posts. I go into all the posts and I look at it and I just say, is this a gadfly? Is this someone who's like, kind of out there, trolling for stuff? Or did you say, wow, this person looks like, beyond the solicited kind of endorsements they've gotten from, again, their college roommate, their sister-in-law, and there really are, they're congratulating people that had worked for them that have gone on their careers. They're congratulating the entrepreneur from their last company on a round of financing. I'm saying that's a bridge that wasn't burned. So yeah, there are, I would say there are, there's a career graph. And as you could kind of do that graph search and understand, okay, we also use it, and we're getting ideas for how are we going to have conversations with other people, to just validate, is our optimism well-founded, or are we being duped by the first date?
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'd love to just get your, bellwether, canary in the coal mine take on the economy at large and kind of the tech media landscape. I've heard on some other podcasts, and you mentioned today, coming out of essentially 6 quarters of down from, capital being deployed, the kind of the easy money, grow at all costs, blitz scaling, days have kind of come to a halt. I would love to just get your take on the market in general for job seekers, but more just your kind of amateur economics take on our sector at large. If you have any comments on where you think we are and where you think we're headed.
Yeah. So I've been hearing this term, for a long time, where economists say, well, it's a barbell, and I'm like, when am I going to see a barbell? Well, you're in a barbell. It's a great time to be in seed, pre-seed, very early stage, because you have a timeline to be able to get to market, to get to revenue, to get to product market fit. So it's a great time, I think, to take risk there. It's a very good time to be growth going to scale or already at scale and now taking share because you've got the resources. In the middle, it's really challenging. I think for most of venture capital and venture capital portfolio companies, it's an existential crisis because their ability to raise the next round of capital has just gotten 100 times harder. Here's why. It's really simple, because for 15 years, when there was near zero interest rates, the people that put money into the funds could get zero yield. That means I wasn't making money at a bank account. I wasn't making money in bonds. I'm making money in most of my fixed income stuff. Now, all of that stuff, I'm getting 7 to 12 points with zero risk.
Yeah.
So why in the hell am I going to do something crazy like put money into a venture capital fund? So that means every VC, is going to have to pull back and get really, oh, and by the way, the stuff that you paid 2021 valuations for, the valuations are now down here. The public comps are that way. So they're not going to be able to raise their next round. So there's a ton of zombie funds and a ton of zombie companies, so it's going to be a real challenge in that messy middle. I think it's a great time to be at, one under the other. I think it's going to be the biggest boom for private equity. We've already seen it, that private equity as a whole now is worth more than all of the banking, so the private market, the assets that they manage are greater. And to me, the opportunity to buy low from all of those, things in the middle is going to be taken by private equity. And their model is simple. Venture capital's model is I spray capital across 20 or 30 deals. I've got a 10-year life of the fund. I cross my fingers, and usually one deal returns the whole fund.
Wow.
It's Vegas. Private equity is I acquire it, I hold it for 3 to 5 years, and I sell it for 4x what I bought it for. And I'll do anything by any means necessary, as Malcolm X once said, to create the value that's going to get me from here, my basis, to a 4x, ideally in 2 or 3 years, not in 5 to 7 years. So I think it's a great time for that asset class, and it's where we're spending all of our time because of what's going on, because of the fundamental change that's happened in the economy, because all the stimulus is gone, and now we've got to look at a very different dynamic going forward.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's I hear friends of ours coming out of, guys have had exits coming out of the woodwork to kind of, take advantage of distressed assets and put teams back into play because it is a buyer's market and there are some opportunities. So yeah, sounds like an exciting time if you're in the right place.
I'll give you a data point on that. So Dave Young, my buddy from Cooley, we've been working together for years and years and years. And he said, JJ, 10 years ago, exits, he said 5 to 10% of the companies that were exiting from the venture startup world were bought by private equity. It's now close to half.
Wow.
So it's not like I'm prognosticating, it's like already happening. And I think that's going to get more and more. So it's that's kind of what we see out there. But you'd ask me kind of, when we were getting ready for this, what I'm excited about, and AI, full stop.
Yeah.
This isn't the internet or mobile or payment rails or, some of those little shifts that we've seen. This is like the wheel, fire, man flying. This is that big,
Wow.
Software ate the world. AI now eats everything. So like when I started in the business in the 80s, 3 of my first 10 clients were AI companies, Symbolics, IntelliCorp, and Inference Corporation. And that was like in the 80s when they were doing expert systems and Lisp machines and Prolog programming language, the stuff, and neural networks and kind of expert systems, rules-based systems. All that died, but it took like 20 or 30 years. What's going on now is changing weekly and monthly, and the advances that are happening for people in their careers and for the companies out there, it's just, it's phenomenal. We have the privilege to work with Bill Gross, who started Idea Lab. who with GoTo, which became Overture, was acquired by Yahoo, they invented paid search.
Yep.
And Bill's, founding a company right now, a stealth company that's basically creating an engine, kind of a marketplace clearing, transaction for understanding that if an LLM gives you a result, they're going to do the attribution and say, where was the content? Where did it originate from? So that the content owner, the creator, will be able to get their pro rata, royalty.
Wow.
What was monetized from that engine. So super exciting. We got another client that is in the software development business. And what they've done is their new mantra is burn the boats. They said, we've left everything behind except a complete AI strategy for our clients when they go into. And they're doing, work for Audi and Volkswagen and Domino's Pizza and multi-million-dollar contracts. So I think it's the most exciting time ever. And, another bumper sticker, you're not going to lose your job to AI. You are going to lose your job to somebody that knows AI.
Yeah, for a long time, I've always believed that sales was somewhat insulated because, an AI is not going to take you to a Laker game or buy you a steak dinner. But I have actually tried to A/B test my own sales copy for outreach against AI, and I'm sad to say that the AI beat me. So I think what I'm really bullish about is I interviewed Bradley Brim DeForest from Formula Monks, who wrote a book about AI recently. And what I really loved about his take on kind of the biz dev relationship business is that AI is actually going to allow us to spend more time in person and more time with people, because what it's going to do is it's going to help automate the process that brings people together for real life experiences and the real work of building relationships and being with each other, to focus on big picture strategy versus, running marketing lead gen or doing emails to try and set up meetings and things like that. A lot of that tissue in the middle will be done through the AI, which I think is exciting. If AI can help me spend more time with people in the real world, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, we're using it for a lot of what you just said relative to copy. We've written 500 great client dossiers and opportunity briefs. And so now we're feeding them in using a RAG technology where we can say, here's an outline for the next search. Give me a first draft. And it's like, your brain explodes. But yeah, the other thing is like, can you do signal analysis and say, all right, you're looking into my HubSpot or you're looking into my applicant tracking system. Who should I be spending time with?
Yep.
That's exciting. And now, like you said, it's going to be your personality, your communication skills, your EQ, your ability to listen that you're spending time on. So it's that bedside manner, and you're able to spend more time with the right people.
I love it. Well, JJ, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. So anything else you want to plug, or you want to let people know how they can get in touch or maybe have a conversation?
Jim@jja.co. Hit me on LinkedIn. And thank you for what you're doing, man. I'm very grateful to spend time with you anytime, but it was a fun conversation. I had fun preparing for it, and always good to see you, buddy. We got to get out there and play some golf.
Let's do it. Well, hey, man. Always have appreciated your sponsorship throughout the years and advocacy to your clients and the things that you put me up for. And more importantly than that, just your friendship and the time that we've got to spend, eating barbecue in Austin. So I was excited when Nate pitched you as a guest, and glad we were able to get this done and memorialize the conversation for my audience across the social platforms that I'm putting the show out to. So thanks again. And as always.
All right, brother. And I hope you put Nate in the show notes. We're a super happy client. And if you're building your LinkedIn brand, Nate's incredible. Corduroy's been amazing for us.
100%. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. So I will do that. And thanks so much for everybody who's tuning along at home. If you enjoyed my conversation with JJ today, don't forget to subscribe wherever you are listening or watching the show. And if you would be so kind as to review the show, positive reviews allow us to expand the reach of the show to potential new audiences. And most importantly, if you know a founder out there who is looking to find amazing candidates for their firm, don't forget to share this episode with somebody that you think would gain value from the conversation that I had with JJ today. So until next week, thanks again, JJ. Appreciate you coming.